Joining me now is Richard Shamuka, Senior Fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, specializing in military strategy and defense procurement. Thanks so much for your time. Of course, Donald Trump has been touting a ceasefire deal for months now, but what realistically are you expecting to come out of this meeting, whether it's with Washington and the Kremlin or whether Zelenskyy is there as well?
Thanks for having me. It's tough to say, given just the track record of sort of broken promises, sort of miscommunications that have occurred over the past 6 months here with the Trump administration. So he's gone and said he's going to have a sort of a wait and see approach, or he's going to feel him out what's Putin's position. And I think that's probably where it's going to end, because there's not going to be much of a way of much of a willingness by Putin to sort of to change any sort of fundamental features of how he's fighting this war. And if that continues in the next coming weeks here or coming months here, he's with a sort of continuing offenses, he's not really going to have much of an incentive to actually change course of what's going on.
Now, for his part, Zelenskyy has vowed Ukraine will never give up land as part of a ceasefire deal, but that seems to be at odds with some of Trump's comments today.
Yeah, there's been multiple reports coming out that they are offering some level of sort of acknowledgement of the current gains, certainly within Crimea or parts of the eastern provinces. So that's been a major sticking point for the Ukrainians, who have sort of fought for several years here now against multiple Russian incursions, not just 2022, but back to 2014. So it's tough to see that as being a sort of a path forward for Ukraine and many of the Western allies. But we'll see how it goes with the negotiations going forward.
So what type of leverage do Ukraine and its European allies, Canada as well, still hold that could influence Trump's position going into the talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin?
I think over the past 6 months here, the willingness of NATO members to sort of purchase large quantities of munitions from the United States government has kind of changed the calculus a fair bit, that there is more of a unified sort of perspective coming out of Europe, and that increased defense spending has sort of changed that view in Washington that Europe isn't taking care of its sort of backyard to the point where it's saying, no, they're actually sustaining a significant part of this war, and that actually the U.S. government is just sort of providing the arms that are being paid for by Europe. And that's actually helped, I think, a fair bit within Washington, especially within Trump administration, to think about, well, if they're going to sustain this and we're just only providing sort of the munitions and whatnot, then maybe we can sort of continue this going forward.
So what are the potential risks here for Ukraine and NATO allies if these discussions between Trump and Putin lead to an agreement that potentially could compromise Ukraine's long-term security, if the two by themselves strike an agreement?
Yeah, and that's kind of the scary scenario that I think a lot of people are trying to contemplate right now. Certainly, we saw earlier this year when there was the cessation of intelligence, provision of intelligence gathering sort of information to the Ukrainians. That really caused some serious disruption to their operations. And the United States is still a critical partner in this war for Ukraine. And some of the capabilities, including things like Starlink, really allow them to fight effectively against a much greater sort of opponent. So I think that if there's a cessation coming from the White House, that can really undermine their ability to continue the defense across their territories.
Richard Shamuka, Senior Fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, specializing in military strategy and defense procurement. Thanks so much for your time for CTV News Channel today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Scott.